What if I told you that right now, sitting in a hardware store for less than $2, there is an oil so powerful, so permanent, and so effective at waterproofing wood that the entire paint and sealant industry has spent nearly a century trying to make sure you never find out about it? Not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well. And when something works too well for too little money, the people making billions off your ignorance have a very strong reason to bury it. I'm going to show you exactly what this oil is, where it came from, why it disappeared from mainstream use right around 1934, and how you can use it today to weatherproof, preserve, and protect any wood surface you own permanently for the price of a cup of coffee. Fences, decks, furniture, log cabins, tool handles, outdoor structures, any wood, any condition, done once, done right, done forever. Stay with me because by the end of this video you will never buy a can of deck stain, wood sealant, or exterior paint again. And that is exactly what they're afraid of. Let's talk about the villain in this story, because there always is one. The global wood coatings industry, that's deck paints, wood stains, waterproofing sprays, exterior sealants, is worth over $12 billion annually. $12 billion every year. And that number only stays that high because most of those products are designed to last 2, maybe 3 years before they crack, peel, fade, and force you to go back to the store and buy another can. That's not an accident. That's a business model. Think about the last time you sealed your deck or painted a fence. How long did it last? 2 summers? 3 if you were lucky? Then it starts peeling, moisture gets underneath, the wood starts rotting, and you're back at the hardware store spending $40, $50, $60 on another product that'll do the exact same thing. They call it maintenance. I call it a subscription you never agreed to sign up for. Now here's the part that should make you angry. This cheap $2 oil that I'm about to tell you about was in widespread common use before the modern paint industry existed. Farmers used it, shipbuilders used it, frontier homesteaders used it. The people who built structures that are still standing today, structures that have survived 100 years of rain, snow, UV exposure, and temperature swings, they weren't using petroleum-based acrylic sealants from a spray can. They were using something ancient, something natural, something that the paint industry quietly lobbied to sideline once they realized it was cutting into their profits. They didn't ban it outright. You can't ban a natural oil. What they did was more subtle. They stopped stocking it in mainstream hardware stores. They stopped teaching it in trade schools. They replaced it with modern solutions that they could patent, trademark, and sell at a markup. And within a generation or two, the old knowledge was just gone, forgotten, buried under layers of advertising and manufactured dependency. That ends today. The oil I'm talking about is linseed oil, raw, boiled linseed oil, pressed from the seeds of the flax plant, used by human civilizations for literally thousands of years. And before anyone in the comments says, "Oh, I've heard of that," let me stop you. Because what I'm going to show you is not the watered-down, chemical additive-loaded product sitting on the shelf at your local big box store. I'm going to show you how the original formula was used, why it worked so much better than what's being sold today, and the specific process that makes it permanent rather than temporary. Linseed oil has been documented in use as a wood preservative since ancient Egypt. The Egyptians used flaxseed oil to treat wooden tools, furniture, and structural beams. Greek and Roman craftsmen used it to preserve oars, ship decking, and weapon handles. When the Roman legions were marching across Europe, building roads, bridges, and fortifications that would last centuries, the wood components in those structures were treated with flaxseed-derived oils. This wasn't folklore. This was engineering. Fast forward to the medieval period. The great cathedrals of Europe, the ones that are still standing after 800 years, used linseed oil as a base for the paints applied to their wooden beams and doors. Flemish painters in the 1400s, including the Van Eyck brothers, are credited with perfecting linseed oil-based paints that have survived centuries without significant degradation. The old masters weren't painting with acrylic. They were using linseed oil as their medium because it polymerizes. It doesn't just dry, it chemically hardens into a protective matrix that bonds with the wood fiber at a molecular level. That word, polymerize, is the key to understanding why this oil is so different from what you're buying at the store today. When modern deck sealant dries, it forms a film on top of the wood. It sits there like a coat of armor on the surface, and that's exactly its weakness. Because wood expands and contracts with temperature and humidity, and that surface film eventually cracks. Once it cracks, water gets underneath, and now you've got a moisture trap. The wood rots from the inside while looking protected from the outside. Linseed oil doesn't do that. When you apply raw or boiled linseed oil to bare wood, it penetrates the grain. It soaks in deep into the cellular structure of the wood fibers, and then it hardens inside. It becomes part of the wood. There's no surface film to crack. There's no gap for moisture to exploit. The wood itself becomes the barrier. That is a fundamentally different approach to wood protection, and it's one that modern products cannot replicate. Not because of advanced chemistry, but because it's a slower, cheaper process that doesn't lend itself to being sold in a $40 aerosol can. Now, about 1934, this is where the history gets interesting and, frankly, a little infuriating. The rise of petrochemical industry in the early 20th century created a gold rush of new synthetic coatings, alkyd resins, nitrocellulose lacquers, and eventually the acrylic and latex paints we know today all entered the market with aggressive marketing campaigns. They were faster drying, they could be tinted any color, and, crucially, they could be manufactured at scale and sold at massive margins. The paint industry consolidated rapidly through the 1930s and 1940s, and with it came the gradual disappearance of traditional oil finishing from mainstream trade practice. I'm not saying there was a meeting in a boardroom where executives said, let's ban linseed oil. What happened was more insidious. The new synthetic products were pushed through trade associations, building codes began favoring measurable mill thickness of surface coatings, and paint contractors, who get paid by the hour in the job, had no financial incentive to recommend a product that required multiple thin applications over several days. The old knowledge didn't get banned, it got economically marginalized. And within 30 years, most professional woodworkers and contractors had simply forgotten it existed. Here's exactly how you do this. The process that homesteaders, shipbuilders, and craftsmen used for centuries, adapted for modern use, optimized for maximum penetration and permanence. What you need? Boiled linseed oil, which you can find for under $2 per application at most hardware stores or online. Pure gum turpentine. Not mineral spirits, not paint thinner, actual gum turpentine, which acts as a penetrating agent that carries the oil deeper into the wood grain. And optionally, raw pine tar, which adds additional antimicrobial and waterproofing properties, and was used historically in the Scandinavian method of wood preservation called tjærebrang. That combination has kept wooden fishing boats and log structures in Norway preserved and functional for generations. Start with your wood surface. It needs to be clean, dry, and bare. If you're working on old painted or stained wood, that existing coating needs to come off because you need the oil to contact the raw wood fiber. Use a wire brush, scraper, or orbital sander. Get down to bare wood. If there's any mold or mildew present, treat it first with a diluted white vinegar solution and let it dry completely. This is not a step you can skip. Moisture trapped under the oil application will undermine everything. Mix your oil solution. 2 parts boiled linseed oil to 1 part pure gum turpentine. Some old-timers went 1-to-1 for the first coat to maximize penetration. The turpentine is not a filler, it's a carrier. It thins the oil enough to flow into the tight grain of dense wood and then evaporates, leaving the oil behind, deep in the fiber. Heat accelerates absorption. On a warm, sunny day, this process works faster and more effectively. Some traditional craftsmen would gently warm the oil before application, not to boiling, just warm to the touch, to increase its flow rate. Apply with a natural bristle brush or a rag. Work it into the grain, don't just paint it on the surface. You want to see the wood drinking it. Apply liberally, let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes, then wipe off any excess that hasn't absorbed. Pooling on the surface is counterproductive and will leave a sticky residue. You want penetration, not surface accumulation. Pro tip: on end grain, the cut ends of boards, fence posts, the tops of deck boards, apply twice as much oil and let it sit twice as long. End grain is where moisture enters wood fastest and where rot starts first. Saturating the end grain is the single most important thing you can do to extend the life of any wooden structure. Safety warning: this is non-negotiable. Rags and applicators soaked in linseed oil and turpentine are a spontaneous combustion risk. As the oil oxidizes and cures, it generates heat. Rags bunched or folded can self-ignite. After you're done, spread used rags flat outside, away from structures, and let them dry completely before disposal. Do not ball them up and throw them in a trash can. People have lost buildings this way. Take this seriously. Allow the first coat to penetrate and cure for at least 24 hours, longer in cold or humid conditions. Then apply a second coat using the same method. 2 coats of this diluted mixture, applied properly to bare wood, will outlast any surface coating product on the market. For maximum protection on outdoor structures, finish with a 3rd coat of straight boiled linseed oil, no turpentine, to seal the surface. This creates a final hardened layer over the penetrated interior. Let this cure for 48 to 72 hours before exposing the wood to rain or direct moisture. What you will end up with is wood that has fundamentally changed at a structural level. It will resist moisture, UV degradation, mold, mildew, and insect penetration. It will not crack, peel, or require reapplication. Refreshing the surface every several years with a single maintenance coat is all it will ever need. Here is what this means in real terms. A gallon of boiled linseed oil costs somewhere between $10 and $15 and will cover several hundred square feet over 2 coats. A gallon of premium deck sealant costs $40 to $60, covers less, and needs reapplication in 2 to 3 years. Over a decade, you will spend 5 to 10 times more on conventional products for inferior temporary protection. The wood structures you treat with this method will outlast the ones treated with modern products. Not by a little, by decades. The paint industry has spent 90 years building a system where you are dependent on their products, on their reapplication schedules, on their improved formulas that somehow never seem to actually solve the problem permanently. That system only works if you don't know that a $2 oil has been doing the job better since before their industry existed. Now you know. Your fence, your deck, your cabin, your tool handles. Treat them once with the method that built civilizations and walk away. No subscriptions, no repeat purchases, no peeling, no rot. Just wood, preserved the way it was meant to be preserved. This is the knowledge they buried. And now it's yours. If you want more of this, more forgotten skills, more ancient techniques, more of the practical knowledge that the modern industrial system has spent decades making sure you never learn, hit subscribe and check the description for the Forbidden Camping Vault, where we've compiled the most suppressed and overlooked survival and self-reliance techniques in one place. They stopped teaching this stuff for a reason. We're bringing it back.